Port of Grace Harbor IT manager. And then we also have, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Chris while we do this. And if anybody needs to know, Cheryl Brown, Grace Harbor Youth Works Executive Director, and Felicia Mullins is our program coordinator, is doing an amazing job with you all. Oh, you're back. Okay, do you want to do your thing now?
Sure, I sure can. And I was able to record the beginning.
Okay, very good. Okay.
Anyways, so today is our topic, and we're talking about the career field of information technology. And I want to share a screen and show you really quick the occupational outlook for careers in information technology. And what you're about to see is a really cool handbook that you can find on the Bureau of Labor Statistics.gov. And it's really great. They show you all these great occupations and what the outlook is for them. If you can see this screen, it should say occupational outlook for computer and information technology occupations. And of course, Chris will go into this a little more, but these are the variety of occupations in IT, including web developers, computer programmers. It doesn't show gamers here, but yes, game developers, video game developers would also be within this career cluster. And it's really actually a diverse career cluster. When we're talking about information technology, we're not only talking about technical systems, we are also talking about security, we are talking about creativity, and of course we're talking about people. So what's gonna happen is we're gonna have Chris go ahead and lead, and then I will have Jacqui Jackson from Boeing tell us a little bit about what she did with Boeing, and then we're gonna open the discussion up to questions. And
okay,
thank you all for joining. I really, we truly appreciate you participating in this and learning more about careers. Take it away, Chris. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first I'm going to go ahead and introduce him officially. Okay, that because you kind of like there and back. But anyway, Chris Hunt, he came to me. He is the IT manager at the Port of Grace Harbor. He is a naturally curious person who enjoys solving problems and helping people. He has a Bachelor of Arts from the University of Washington. So welcome, Chris, for joining us today. It's yours.
Thank you very much. So information technology is a massive field. Now it's touching pretty much everybody's lives, and in every sector of the economy, you'll find computer systems or automated systems of one kind or another. And so there's a lot of people involved in it, and it's becoming more and more important to everyone who doesn't realize they're involved in it, but they are. Myself, as Cheryl mentioned, didn't get into it straight in high school or even straight out of high school. Of course, that was the late 80s, and so the computer field was a little bit different then. It was harder to get into than it is now. But I think it's important for people in computer systems to be creative thinkers and flexible thinkers. Technology moves really fast, and I don't really think that you can expect to, go to college, get a body of knowledge, get a job, and just do that job for the rest of your life. That's not really a practical situation. Most jobs aren't like that anymore, and technology is definitely one of those jobs where almost everything you knew 5 years ago is no longer something you use daily, and so you must always be learning and willing to learn and have an open mind. For me, I enjoy computers, but I don't always use them on my off time. It's not like my whole life. I don't play video games anymore. I'm kind of a Luddite. I don't let my kids use a lot of screens. And so it's not necessary for you to be a dyed-in-the-wool nerd 24/7. It's a career, and it doesn't have to be your whole life, but the natural curiosity and willingness to learn is definitely a personality trait that you do take with you no matter where you go. So that's what I would definitely encourage people to work on, is keep an open mind, to be willing to learn, ask questions, and get involved. So that being said, I can talk a little bit about what your sort of fundamental IT positions are. Does that sound reasonable? Okay. So they are pretty wide ranging. You have people like web developers, right? They develop websites for businesses, which are critical now. A business doesn't really operate without a website of one kind or another, and they all need websites. And web developing is a good entry level, can be an entry level position where you get you get a little bit down and dirty with some code, and you also, if you're graphically minded or into the graphic arts, it's a great place for someone like you to apply yourself. That is one of the biggest IT jobs, is web developer, because there are so many people needing it, and so many people doing it, and so many ways to do it, that that is a nice place to be. It does not require a college education. You can freelance, or you can work for a firm, and everything you need to know you can learn for free if you like on the internet, or you can go to college to learn it, or some online college, any kind of a combination of those things. Then there's your sort of IT support, or a support specialist, or a desktop support. There's a variety of ways to talk about that position. I did that for many years. That was sort of kind of how I started a little bit. I did phone support at an internet service provider. So back when people dialed up with their telephone lines and shing-ong, ging-gong, and you got to wait all day for a photo. Well, I was the guy who helped you figure out what phone number to dial and why it wasn't connecting, and how to load your email and all that stuff. And that's a really important job. That job is technical, but also, like a lot of IT jobs, really focuses on people skills. And I think YouthWorks stresses this a lot, that no matter where you go, those people skills are absolutely critical. You've got to be able to empathize with people when they're having trouble, help them understand what the trouble is, help them understand the solution, and sometimes you even have to help them do the solution. You can't always swoop in and fix it for them. Sometimes you have to walk them through it, and that can be a real challenge sometimes when people are frustrated. That's a big arena of employment. Again, it's a kind of an entry-level position. It's definitely not not a degree is necessary, often just a high school diploma, and then many organizations will provide training for you with their specific tools that you'll be supporting. So that's a good entry-level position, and that's how I started as well. Moving on from there, you might do that for a few years or less, and then you might be getting into like a systems analyst or engineer, where you would support the computer systems that people use. So there's sort of your servers and your clients, and you go from supporting the clients, the many, to supporting the servers, which are often fewer. So those are like your building servers, configuring servers, helping people connect to them, making sure they're highly available, backups, upgrades, all that kind of stuff. And then that, again, often does not require college. It does require quite a bit of training. Hands-on in particular is very valuable in that field. And it's a field that changes very quickly. So like any IT field, being involved with a community that keeps you up to date and gives you new information and lets you try things out is very useful. The IT field's really great for that. There's a lot of free and open source technology. People are very generous with their skills and their time, and they've been making this stuff freely available for decades now. And so if you're interested in IT, I definitely would encourage you to just get out there and take a look. A lot of this stuff is absolutely free, and you could get started, by dinner time. You could have a Linux server up and running for the first time. So it can be very exciting. Programming is another skill that's very, very popular and in demand, like all the apps on your phones and your smart TVs and Amazon's website all heavily rely on programmers. They write things from scratch. They create something out of nothing, literally. So if you think about, you know, if you think about Twitter or Facebook or Reddit, those are all things that people started with, you know, an hour of time, and they threw something together and they saw what worked and what didn't, and they just kept developing it. And all of that knowledge is also well documented. It's open. It's not a secret. So you can get started anytime. It's easy. What else is there? So there's IT project managers, or project management generally is another field for IT. That's more like you might be working for a consultant, or at Boeing you would have an organization big enough to support some full-time project managers, but generally you go in and you get hired to shepherd a project from A to B and help them identify their needs and their constraints and their budget and find solutions and make sure things show up on time and work the way everyone expects them to. And then, you know, of course, get them to sign off so they can write the check. And then you move on to the next project. That's a skill I don't have, really. So that's an interesting one to me. What else? Well, you talked about game developers. That's a form of programming, but it also can do a lot of graphics can be involved. Obviously, gaming is generally a visual process, so it's a good meeting of creativity and programming, and so I think it excites a lot of people. And again, doesn't require much money or effort to get involved. You can just get started. I mean, some of the most popular games are basic, you know, all those Bejeweled and Angry Birds and all that stuff is not high tech. It's really doable. So I encourage you to give that a try. And career level, once you've been doing it for a little while, you get into things like information security officers or chief information officers, things like that. Those are really higher level career-based positions. They generally do require a 4-year degree in something related and you know, some years of experience. They're really important jobs because those are the people that we pay to see the whole picture and to make sure that you know, like Zoom, for example, is a great example of they were a little bit asleep at the wheel in the security department, and they've taken a lot of bad press for that, and rightly so, and they're trying hard to fix that. But you know, the person responsible for that would be their chief information security officer. And so that's an important job, and more important now than ever. Any questions at this point, or comments, or anything anybody wants to bring up?
Well, I would like to ask you about the information security. I guess it would be like career path under IT. What are some of the trends in information security? It's like you're saying, there's more and more hackers out there. There's more and more ways that bad actors can infiltrate systems. So what are some of the trends in that area in terms of careers, and what kind of things would someone come across in that field?
Well, that's an excellent question. That is a field that changes constantly, you know, from day to day and month to month. And it's a field that typically is overlooked until it's too late. So it's a great skill to have. The government and high-end companies are definitely hiring for these types of positions because they know that they're big targets and they have a lot to lose. Companies who invest a lot in research and development need to protect their products and their value. And so, you know, if someone just walks in and steals their blueprints, they've just lost a lot of money. right? And then of course government, you see hiring quite a bit. I think this cybersecurity is projected to grow at something like 12 to 15% in the next few years, which is way above the average for all other job types, right? So I looked at some numbers just this morning from the Washington area, and I think half of the jobs for cybersecurity are unfilled. So well, we have only half of the people we need. It pays well. It's a very challenging position, though. I do a little bit of that myself, and you really need to be able to think on your feet. You have to have a curious mind, and you have to be willing to do a lot of research. There's a massive toolkit available that's changing all the time, and again, a lot of that is free and open source, and so that's really great. But I'm on a couple of webinars a week that, you know, where they're from Washington, D.C., New York, San Francisco, Austin, Chicago, Seattle. They're all saying we need more cybersecurity trained people. And the tools are just now coming online. So there's a lot of college programs or certification programs online that are sort of just in the last couple of years really getting developed and getting mature enough to issue certificates that people recognize and value. So that's moving fast. I really am excited by that field, and I would encourage anyone to look at that. And if you're really curious about it, I can certainly be glad to send you some resources to that.
Hey, thank you, Chris. We do have a question from Cheryl. She asks, what is a typical workday for you in your position, and what kind of tasks do you do?
Okay. So as the IT manager at the Port of Grays Harbor, I'm the only IT person. So I'm responsible for all of that, from well, not so much web developing, but I support the web server. I do desktop support. I do server development. I do cybersecurity. I do project management. So all those positions are mine. My typical day, you know, right now I start from my bedroom and log in. Usually IT folks get emails and often pages 24/7. So even by the time I start, I have a pretty good idea of who I need to help first or what I need to look at first. So I'll do the quick email scan, you know, sort of prioritize my emails, contact a few people who have trouble early in the day, you know, resolve their issues. We often have a meeting or two in the morning. We might meet about grant applications where they need my help on designing and pricing servers or security cameras or card scanners or even credit card machines. You know, IT, anything with a plug or batteries is now IT. So you get a lot of phone calls, and then so that's sort of the desktop support stuff. And then I have mid-range and long-term projects that I'm working on. So I might be upgrading our server infrastructure from Windows 2008 to Windows 2016, and I've got, you know, 10 servers, and each one of those has to be done often after business hours, right? So IT positions are often very flexible timing. So on any 40-hour work week, I might work only 30 of those hours from 9 to 5. And it comes and goes depending on the projects. Some things can be done during business hours. And then we have longer term projects that you just have to keep pushing through, make sure that everyone knows what they're supposed to be working on. And then, of course, the port has 4 or 5 different locations. So periodically we have to visit those locations and check in with people and deploy new equipment, or you know, gives people some face-to-face support. That's still really important to people, that they can talk to someone face to face and ask questions, and we make sure that they get that support too. Does that answer your question?
I think that's a fabulous answer. And like you said, it's really interesting how much actually is involved in IT. Would you say like the people aspect is very important to the IT careers?
Oh yeah, yeah. I would say that's probably number two, if it's not number one. So managing expectations, interpreting people's needs. You know, people say, well, I need a new printer. Well, if you buy them a printer and you slap it on their desk and install it, they'll say, well, I wanted a color printer, or I need a printer that scans too, or I don't like that brand, or, well, no, I wanted it at home. So sort of helping people think through IT is really important. A lot of people don't realize what they don't want, or they don't know what they want, but they know what they don't want. So working with people to develop that into an actionable item is important, and also training people. And a big part of my job is keeping people thinking about cybersecurity in a proactive way. So I'll send out emails periodically. Like, I don't want to bore them or get them to ignore me, but once every 2 weeks or so, an object lesson about you know, someone who didn't do it well, or something we need to watch out for, or an example of a scam that's kind of close to home. Is always a good way to keep people suspicious in a good way.
Oh, really quick, do any of our oh wait, we have someone. This is from Pat Lang. What personal attributes do people need for an IT career? That's a great question. Thanks, Pat.
Well, that is a good question. IT careers, I think, have a broad scope. And so I think there's a good place for almost any personality, really, in IT. It just depends on what interests you. And, you know, when you're talking about personality traits, these aren't skills. These are things that are going to stick with you. Maybe you're someone who really loves to work with people. You probably don't want to be a data center maintenance sysadmin then, because it's just you and 40,000 servers and one other person, right? But if you like to work alone, well, that's a great spot for you. You know, I'm not very creative. I don't draw or write or play music. So web design is not really my thing. I can do a website if someone brings me the design. I can do that, but the creative bit's not for me. But there are lots of creative people in IT as well. But I think the trait that I would stress, that is sort of the overarching trait, is you have to be willing to learn new technology, keep an open mind, and be curious. You know, give up your sort of preconceived notions and look what people are really doing. You know, there's the way you think people should use their email, and then there's the way people actually use their email, and they're different. And so you have to pay attention. You know, a lot of people use email like a filing system. Like, I don't save files on my computer, I save them in my inbox. And that, for an email administrator, is insane. But that's how it works. And so you need to be willing to watch how people are using technology and adapt to that and make it better if you can. So open mind, curious mind are the overarching skills or personality traits, I would say.
We have a question from Ellie, another great question. What skills have you acquired or grown throughout your career?
Good one. Okay. So I think probably the most important one that I've learned is troubleshooting, right? When you come upon a problem, and that's really my favorite part of the job. I like nothing better than to sit and have people bring me problems all day long. You know, long-term planning, web design, conference calls, but I love problem solving. And so learning how to talk to people and interpret their information and boil down to what's actually happening and then solve that problem is really exciting, and it is a skill that needs to be developed. You need to learn how to be discriminating, how to throw out misinformation or things that don't fit the pattern, or pay special attention to things that don't fit the pattern because maybe you're looking at the wrong pattern, right? So you have to have an open mind there and be really curious, be willing to chase down those loose ends and see if they fit your hypothesis. So it's a real scientific process. Also, project management is a skill that I have been working on. It's really important to keep people involved and knowing what's going on and looking for problems that might be stumbling blocks if you don't give them the right amount of attention at the right time. Technical writing is also, I enjoy writing a lot, and so technical writing is a skill that I've been working on, just how to explain something in a way that people can understand and really grasp. You know, you don't want to be too wordy or give too many examples, but you don't want to not give it enough attention either. And then ultimately, working with people has really been the hardest part. Working on phone support for old ladies having trouble dialing up, that was really, really hard. I mean, I would just, yeah, I learned a lot from that process because it is hard. So being patient, empathy, it's kind of a lot like being a parent. You learn a lot of the same kind of processes.
I love it. I have a friend that used to do desktop support back in the 90s, and he was he told me that some people would call in and they would be doing things with their mouse and he couldn't understand where the pointer was. And so finally he would ask them, "Where is your mouse?" And the customer would say, "Oh, I'm using it with my feet." And he would have to say, "No, you have to use your hands." So
you never know.
You never know. In fact, we have Patty. She makes some comments here. She says, IT can be so frustrating when you cannot figure out an issue. And she says, you have to be able to calm people down. I can imagine you've had some kind of angry people who are like, I can't turn it on. What do? I have something due tomorrow.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I've had people call me, I've got a lot of stories, but I've had people call me upset because their internet's working and they have no electricity, right? The power's out. I had someone buy a wireless modem for their house, and then they went on a trip to like the Bahamas or something, and they called me from the Bahamas irate because their laptop wasn't getting internet, and they bought wireless internet. And I'm like, well, actually the wireless internet's just at your house, but they thought it was everywhere and they were totally mad. Doctors, I've had a lot of doctors and they are pretty mad people sometimes. So yeah, calming people down, you know, they need empathy. Technology is frustrating. It can be, especially if you don't understand it. And so helping them to know that you understand how hard it is, helping them to understand the problem, and then hopefully fixing the problem. Not always, but hopefully.
Well, this is great because Pat asks, speaking to frustrating, what is the most frustrating aspect of it, of IT?
Well, I suppose that depends on the person. I know some people, you know, who are frustrated with the pace of change. And you know, that's not a good sign because that's not slowing down. Like I said at the beginning, IT's not, well, like your mom was saying, she used to work at the phone company, and so did my mother-in-law. And back then, you know, you learned how to do a thing and you just did it until, you know, for 20 or 30 years in the 60s and 50s and 40s, but it's not like that anymore. So you got to be willing to change all the time. I'll tell you one thing that's a bit frustrating is a lack of female and minority in IT. It's kind of a white guy party everywhere you go, and that's frustrating. I know there's a lot of people working on that. I try to work on it too, but the Harbor's a pretty small community, so we'll see what we can do. Well, if you're in government, budget is always a frustration, right? That's probably true in private industry as well. Actually, I would say, yeah. So budgeting can be frustrating, but you've got to be able to work within a budget and set expectations. You know, if your boss wants everything but doesn't want to pay for it, you've got to tell them that that's just not going to happen. You got to pay for it. I guess that's about it.
Wow, we have a lot of great questions. This is awesome. And I hope really quick that Jacqui Jackson, you're just standing by. This one is from Cameron. Why does the Wi-Fi volume symbol change color from time to time?
What? I don't know. Does it? Where? I don't know. I guess that's up to the presenter, however they want it to appear.
I don't know either. But this is a great example of the kind of questions and problems that you would have to solve in the IT.
Right, right. Red is bad, green is good. Walk towards the green, I would say.
Right.
Is he referring to Zoom specifically, Felicia?
That's just the question. Cameron, can you give us a little more detail?
That's what I was thinking, but I don't have a Wi-Fi.
What on your Wi-Fi volume? Is that on your laptop that's changing color? And you can chat and say yes or shake your head. I see you.
Yeah, I was listening to this and a little Wi-Fi thing. Okay, dang, I can't speak today. Sorry. A little Wi-Fi signal on the bottom left or right, wherever I saw it, kept changing color, and I didn't know what it was. I thought it was like a technical problem or something like that. I didn't know what it meant.
Huh.
Mine turns green when I'm speaking, but that's about the most help I can give you, and that's in Zoom specifically.
Thank you.
Sorry, Cameron. Wish I could be more helpful.
It's okay.
No,
It's okay.
I love it because those are the kind of questions that IT managers and people in the IT field do solve. They do answer, and some of those problems they do solve. So
Yeah.
let me see. And Ellie says really quick, I think it might be how good your Wi-Fi connection is. So that's why it probably changes color, because if your Wi-Fi has a good connection, it's probably green. If it's kind of good, it's probably yellow. And if it's no connection, it's probably red or nothing. So Chris, did you have a cool infographic to show us?
Well, yeah, I've got a couple of ideas here. Let's see. I'll share my screen. I've got, okay, so how about this one? So I don't know how well you can see this. This is from a couple of years ago, but it kind of gives you an idea of just the amount of information we're talking about here. The Weather Channel receives 18 million forecast requests every minute of every day, right? And this is 2 years old. Tumblr, almost 80,000 posts a minute. Google, almost 4 million searches a minute. So the numbers are just mind-blowing. And the ability to, an important takeaway from this is there is no way any one person can be the master of all this technology. Don't expect to know everything, and don't let other people expect you to know everything. You've got to set realistic expectations. There's just so much going on that the best skill you can have is the ability to learn what you need to learn and to not worry about the stuff that you don't need to, and make sure that the people that you work with know that. And if they need more, they need to hire more people, because we're all human, and this is just way too much information. And then I had, well, the career cluster thing, and I guess, I don't know if you can see that, but this is the IT, so this is the state of Washington's career connected, or what is it called? Career Connect or whatever, career clusters. So these are the, you know, the average salaries you might get, how many people are employed in each of these IT positions, and what their growth is. You can see software developers is 5% growth, and multimedia artists are also 5% growth. So that's your web design, web developers, app developers, so both creative and technical people in the IT field. And those are by far the largest growth areas within IT. The other stuff, the sort of the high end or the highly technical stuff, or the high end like CIO, CTOs, those aren't big growth areas. They pay okay, but there's just, it takes a while to get those positions. But multimedia, software developers, programmers, those are growing really fast, and there's a lot of people involved. And a lot of people means you have a big community of people to draw from, and you know, a lot of camaraderie and help. You know, people are very generous, especially in IT, it seems like. I think that is really all I have to share.
Well, this is spectacular information, especially about, not only about the data, but about the growth. So it looks like the more that technology advances, the more we have innovative tools, the more there is information, the more there's growth in the field. And so my question to you really quick before we go back to the chat and then talk to Jacqui Jackson, how do you keep abreast of the trends? How does an IT person stay on top of all the innovations?
That is also tough and tricky. So I am part of the Port of Grace Harbor, which is a small government. So the federal government actually offers quite a lot of assistance to state, local, tribal, and territorial governments, either at a low price or for free. So they do, they alert me to, say, vulnerabilities, new vulnerabilities in software, new publications that they're putting out for standards, whether those are best practice standards or, well, the federal government puts out a lot of documentation. So if you can keep up with that alone, you're doing pretty good. Also, I'm part of several online communities, some subreddit groups for InfoSec and sysadmin folks, some industry-specific mailing groups for ports and also for info security people. And then there are a couple of news websites I stay up on. And then also I periodically try to get certified. So I have several Cisco certifications, and I'm working on some new cybersecurity certifications as well. So that sort of ongoing formal education is really important, both to me and to employers. They like to see that you're out there learning, and certification programs are a good thing for employers to kind of wrap their heads around and say, okay, this is a thing that I can look up on the internet and is an acknowledged, you know, the industry acknowledges that this is a useful certificate, actually says something. You know, it's not just something I bought on the internet. So I find that to be rewarding and challenging. And there's a community built in with each of those too now, of course. The online courses have message boards, and often you develop relationships with people that you go through a program with.
Here's a great question from Jim. And he says, what was the worst situation you have had with a customer?
Oh, well, I've had a lot of embarrassing moments. Probably the worst situation I ever had was my most embarrassing situation, which was early on in my career, I was doing some web design, and we got a contract to do a web designer or a website for a local person. And we kind of talked to the guy for half an hour or something, and then me and my coworker went off, and we were really into the code, and we just kind of like sequestered ourselves and built this website, me and this other employee that we really loved. And then when we came back to the person who would be owning it, they didn't like it at all, and we were crushed, you know. So later that night, I was at a restaurant and I was whining and whinging on to my friends about how this guy didn't know what he was talking about and didn't know a good website when he saw it and blah, blah, blah. And it turns out that he was sitting right behind me. And I had never met him. I'd only talked to him on the phone, so I didn't realize he was there. And so I learned a couple of things there. A, watch what you say in a public place, especially in a small town. And B, if you're doing something for someone, make sure you understand what they want. I built the website that I wanted for him, but it's not the website that he wanted, and it was a huge waste of my own time and my coworkers' time and his time. And so that was the kind of project management, managing expectations, being able to talk to someone and understand what they want from the words they're using, ask important questions to get closer to the truth, and you know, give people what they want, not what you want to give them, I think. So that was probably the hardest lesson I had to learn.
We have a comment from our awesome CTE counselor at Wishka, Ruth Ann, who says confidentiality is important in all fields.
Well, hi, Ruth Ann. I'm a proud Wishka parent. I have a couple of kids who have been at that school, and I'm just down the street right now. So that's nice to hear from you. And thanks for that comment.
Yeah. She also asked the questions, what computer languages do you need to know?
Well, that's a good question. That depends on what you want to do. If you want to be, if you're into programming and you want to make things, I would definitely look at Python and XML right now. If you want to create websites, you're looking at HTML, JavaScript, XML. So it kind of depends on what you want to do. But those are all things that you could get started with today. You know, you could have something by dinner time, literally, in any of those languages, which is really just super cool. And then we haven't even discussed the Internet of Things, you know, Raspberry Pis and Arduinos, and building beehive monitors and cat feeders and smart refrigerators and all that stuff that you can do for $20, literally. It's just totally incredible.
Well, this has been such a great discussion. Cheryl actually has some things to say, and then we're gonna talk to Jacqui Jackson from Boeing really quick. And then we'll come back to you, Chris, just in case there are some other questions out there. Cheryl, go ahead.
All right,
Okay,
thank you, Felicia. Chris, I also wanted to tell everyone a couple more things about you. And Chris and I were on the board of Grays Harbor Youth Works about the same time. And that was about a couple years ago, I believe. And then Chris also does Career Pathway Day for us. And that's where we take 2 high schools, the sophomore class, we code them by their career interests. And then we plan that day for the students to where they go to the college. They get orientated or welcome, and they get information about the college, and they do workshops. And when everybody's color-coded about their career in the bus, Chris, we all work together, and we put the kids on the buses, and they go visit two businesses in the area based on their career choice. And Chris, you have facilitated that program very well in the last 2.5 years or 3 years that you're doing it. And I'm so disappointed we didn't get to do it this year. So I'm hoping we can somehow reach out to the students and maybe do something anyway. I don't know. But anyway, I just want everybody to know that not only is Chris the IT guy, he's the people person IT guy, and definitely appreciate everything you do for us with Grays Harbor Youth Works also. So, and thank you for your time today.
You're welcome. Thank you, Cheryl.
Absolutely, Chris. Thank you so much. Stand by. I would like to introduce everyone to Jacqui Jackson, who is also my mom. And she has her name, she goes by Uhura, but I'll let her explain why, especially if you're a Star Trek fan, a Trekkie, then you should probably definitely listen to this one. Okay, Mom, I'm unmuting you. Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. So Uhura came from, I'm an old chick, so I love Star Trek. I watched the original series when I was in high school, and you know, I love the STEM topic because Uhura, if you're a Star Trek fan, was the communications officer on the Starship Enterprise. She was actually the telephone operator to the galaxy. And for me, a little black chick from Reno, Nevada in the mid 1960s, she was the only person I saw that looked like me that was on a spaceship, that worked with scientists and that worked with technology, and that she was an officer and she was important. So that's why I use the name Uhura. Chris, that was a great presentation. You covered everything that large corporations use in the way of IT, specifically at Boeing. Great information on job paths. The big thing that was coming on board when I left, though, was data analytics. Everybody, that was the hot thing. And to put that in perspective, when you look at the news every day, any day, and we're talking about the coronavirus and the testing and the curves, and they show you those charts and everything and bending the curve. All of that information is built from massive amounts of data that a lot of the scientists and educational institutes take to figure out, making projections about, you know, when is this curve going to happen? How much testing do we have? And data analytics, everybody loves them. If you use Twitter, and you can ask Felicia about this, she's kind of a Twitter expert. You can get analytics about how many people are looking at your feed, you know, that kind of thing. So that is a hot up and coming career path. And as Chris said, there is lots of fabulous free information and education available out there. And in my experiences, people in IT are really willing to help. If you need help, they really like showing what they know and helping you go forward. So that's my take on it.
Really quick, Mom, how did you start in IT? And I would even say, how did you start in telecommunications? You grew up watching Uhuru on Star Trek, who is the communications, the operator of the galaxy. So what happened with your career? What was that something that inspired you to go into telecom?
Well, actually, they happened about the same time. I was a senior in high school, and back in the day, we had no internet or any of that stuff. So a friend and I were just walking around downtown, and it was interesting. We went to the military recruiter's office because we thought we were going to go, and we wanted to. At that time, you had to go to San Francisco for the physical and all. So we just wanted a free trip to San Francisco. And then right next door was the telephone company. So we went and applied. Long story short, I was 17 years old when I started as a telephone operator. This is interesting. In that, 50-year period, the technology has gone from, has anybody used, or do any of you still have rotary telephones? All right, Chris.
Wait, I want to ask the students, have you ever used a rotary telephone? Like Ellie or Cameron, Jim, you've used one before? Ellie kind of shook her head. Yeah, you've used one. What about you, Cameron? Have you used a rotary phone? Ellie says yes, her grandma had one.
Well, it was really funny because touch tone telephones came in, and that was like the high technology. So that's how I kind of got into the telecom game. Jumping ahead to the late 80s, I went to work for Boeing. Boeing had spent $26 million buying 5 They were called electronic telephone switches. This is really weird because back in the day, if you had a phone number, you had a specific line. There was one line, one number. And all of those lines had to be wired through these big electronic switching systems. So we did that, and that was the height of technology. Fast forward to 2012, which was my last telecom IT project. All of our voice went to the internet. So we went from 40 some years ago, rotary phones, to people doing their voice over the internet. And my last little comment is, I see somebody said that they had somebody in their family that was a Star Trek fan. I remember the Star Trek folks have those cool little communicators on their chest, and they just, boop. Can you imagine that? We've got a communicator. We've got cell phones. So going from then to now is pretty amazing. And for you, looking ahead, for you young folks, you know, the next 10, 20 years, it's going to be pretty amazing for you. So I think this is a place that you might look for a good career.
Hey, thanks so much, Mom. I really appreciate it, Miss Jacqui Jackson. And I just want to give people a chance to ask Jacqui Jackson or Chris another question before we end our meeting here. Definitely the chat is funny. Chris said that he's never used a candlestick phone. And I'm not sure if our young people remember the candlestick phones. Yeah, exactly. Ellie's kind of like, yeah, you're talking like this. Oh my gosh, it's fun to see what all the comments are. Does anyone have any other questions for Chris or for Jacqui? Oh, we have Pat. She says that she used party lines in Kansas. I remember the party lines. You dial into like a 1-800 number, and you and all your friends and strangers can talk together.
Actually, we didn't have to dial.
Oh.
Everybody was on the same party line, so when you picked up, you could listen into the neighbors' phone calls. There was like 8 of us on the same line back in the country, and you pick up and listen to Mrs. Avery or.
Yeah.
And the hard part about being a teenager is they would listen to you as well.
Yes.
Very quietly, very silently. So not many secrets in the country.
That's so weird that it went from eavesdropping on people's phone lines to like looking at their Facebook feed.
Exactly.
I want to ask Chris, in your career, what was the so far, what has been the biggest technological advance that has surprised and stunned you?
I think server virtualization has been the most important technology that affected me. Real briefly, that is a way, it used to be that you had a server, which was a box, and it ran Windows or some operating system, and it did something for you. But nowadays, they have made it so that each server can impersonate many servers. So the servers that are inside that server think they are on a piece of metal in a rack. They don't realize that their brothers and sister servers are all virtualized inside this one box. So it's really it's changed the economics vastly, because now instead of buying a $4,000 server to do one thing and a $4,000 server to do another thing and another one, you buy one $10,000 server and it hosts a dozen or 2 dozen or 3 dozen virtualized servers, and you can dynamically change how much processor or memory or network they get. And storage has really changed a lot too. I can't really get into the specifics of that, but just in terms of the amount of data collected, first of all, Jacqui, when you talk about data visualization and analytics, thank you for bringing that, because that is a huge topic. I really enjoy National Geographic for that reason. When they present an infographic, it is a visual representation of data and they cram so much information into one picture that's really that's a doctorate level study, data visualization. You can make a lot of money, but you're kind of limiting yourself to big money corporations, governments, things like that. But that's really an advanced study in IT that if you like graphics and if you love information, that's a neat marriage of those two things. And also, Jackie, I just want to compliment you on Felicia. She's just a wonderful, energetic, enthusiastic, positive person. I'm completely blown away and feel really glad to have her on our team and very lucky to have found her.
Me too. Yeah.
Oh, can't hear you, Jackie. But good job. She's a great lady.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Chris, I do have one more question. I want to sneak it in here. Do you think artificial intelligence will be implemented in businesses in the next 50 years, or do you think we're still far out when it comes to AI?
I am glad you brought that up. Actually, that was one thing I wanted to leave everybody with was, you know, it is an exciting time to be a young person. There's a lot going on, and you're not going to have to deal with the grandmas on dial-up. Everybody you know is going to have some familiarity with technology once you know, the rest of us are dead. So that won't take very long, probably, but it'll be really amazing and wonderful for you. However, AI is already here. We're already automating so many things, and the coronavirus has proven really just how much that is. So there are many jobs that simply won't be available to humans in 20 years' time, right? You're not going to go to McDonald's and get a burger from a person. You're not, you know, pop machines, things like that are just the beginning. It's retail, you know, you're going to be self-checking, not just at Home Depot and at Safeway, but everywhere. So when you're thinking about your long-term career, you want to focus on things that humans do really well, right? Humans are able to, they're creative, right? They're problem solvers. They love other people, right? Humans don't really like computers. They don't like talking to computers. So focus on those things that humans do really well. Be creative, take a chance, investigate something, put a couple hours into some technology. If you don't like it, move on, that's fine. It's all there. There's so many resources on the internet that in a couple of hours you can try and buy something, no problem. Just feel free to explore, to learn, to build something. If you don't like it, move on. You'll find something that strikes home with you, and that's where you want to make your home, I think.
Wow, I love that advice, and I love that outlook. That is exactly what all of us need, not only our youth here today, but to definitely find out ways that that people do well and go from there. Thank you so much, Chris. It's so fabulous to have you on. So fabulous to have you on, Mom, Jacqui Jackson, and of course, Cheryl and all of you, all of our students.